Right, hello OAS family. It is time for another book review, and today we are reviewing a book called The Chinese Landscape Painting Manual by Wei Tzu-hsi. So before we get into the details of the book, I want to talk a little bit about the general statistics. The book is a very popular size, is 8¼ inches wide by 11¾ inches high. It has approximately 136 pages, and it has text in both Chinese and English. So without further ado, we'll get into the details of the book. What I really like about this book is it has different sections that feature different elements of landscape painting. So not only does it show you finished paintings, but it sort of breaks down very iconic elements and shows them separately, so that you can practice them on their own, and then you can get a feel for how you might put them into compositions. So the book starts with a biography on the artist, and has it here in both Chinese and English. And then we get into our first section, which is talking about rocks. So we can see here that there's some stroke breakdowns, elemental buildups of different rock elements here. And you can see how the artist uses the strokes to build the textures. So here is a section where they highlight rocks with horizontal fissures, and then talking about grouping rocks, and then showing like large rocks grouped together and then rocks grouped with smaller rocks. So these are just showing ways that they group the rocks together into elements. And now we're expanding sort of the size of the rock work and talking about how we depict like mountaintops. So here's some instruction about how they drag the strokes to create the texture for the mountaintops. And then how they employ different types of strokes to create the idea of these like sand slopes. And then these like either peak elements or stalagmite elements, different types of rock elements. And here's compositionally how they leave the bottom more dithered to imply that there will be clouds here. So the lower part of the peak is, you can see they leave it dry, and there's a lot of blank spaces left there so clouds can be added afterwards. And then here's how they show a little bit of more depth in the perspective by having things in the foreground, in the midground, and the background, and also varying ink tones. And then we have this idea of peaks rising out of the clouds, and then showing the rocks like on the shoulder of a hill. Things at like a foot of a cliff. And then here again we have this idea of mountains that are surrounded by the evening cloud. So you start to see here that they've shown the mountain elements and also begin to show and depict the cloud or mist elements. And then here's how dots are employed on the side of mountains to suggest foliage. The author calls them moss dots. And then a little idea about how we start incorporating the idea of water. So the Chinese word for landscape is san sui. So san means mountain, and sui means water. So we start to now see, after some time spent on the mountains, we have this idea of how we might incorporate the depiction of water. And we have this idea of a rolling stream here going over the rocks, and also this idea of a waterfall here. So here's a smaller waterfall at a foot of a mountain, and then here is how they depict waterfalls with sort of like a more of an outline style. And then here's like a waterfall between two cliffs, and then this idea where we have it cascading off of these stone cliffs. Now we're getting to a section into trees. So like I said at the beginning, we have these different element breakdowns. So we started with rocks and mountains, and then we moved into water a little bit, and now we have this idea of trees. So showing here how to paint the trees with more of a splashed ink technique, and then over here we have showing the difference between sort of young and old trees. Getting a little bit more detailed here, filling in these elements of trees with different types of leaves, showing like these moss dots on trees. And then we have this idea of a tree growing out of a rock crevice here. And then here's some ideas for tree leaves, thinking about using dotting strokes with a split brush to create this idea. Our Biff brush is very good for this type of technique. So for those of you who have a Biff brush and you think that you're only using it for bamboo trunks, the Biff brush is actually very good. You can split the tip here and then use it for these type of foliage strokes. Now we have this different kind of trees, these little willow, this idea of willows. So this talks about kind of like a budding tree, the type of tree that usually grows alongside rivers. And then here's some depiction of young bamboo. So an interesting kind of breakdown here of elements of how they build these leaf groupings. So all the way down to the individual strokes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for these groupings, and then how they put the groupings together, and then eventually how they put them together with the trunks. So we have these young pine trees versus old pine trees, and then how we would do pine needles. More ideas on the pine needles. Different poses for the pine trees here. And then here is using thick dots for representing pine needles. More of an abstract or impressionistic kind of way. Showing pines in different distances over here. And then we have this idea of the fir tree. And then more ideas of these kind of fir trees. Pretty appropriate because we're getting into that Christmas season. So if you ever wanted to take this lesson and depict some Douglas fir trees or Christmas trees, that would be very nice. So here's a forest of cypress and juniper and fir. And then here's some close-ups of like old cypress trees. So you can see sort of how they depict these gnarled growths and knottiness of the old trees. And then here's some old trees with vines. And then here's this autumn forest segment where they show some suggestion of these trees in the background, and then some darker host tree elements in the foreground. And then here's how they show blending of different types of trees together, and then showing sort of compositions where the trees are entangled with each other. These are these very distinctive banyan trees that have these intertwining roots. Very kind of iconic trees in Asia. And here is a depiction of a forest in the Changpai Mountains, and then a forest in the Xi'an Mountains. And then here's some fruit trees, both plum, peach and plum. So getting into the use of some color now. And then we have pear and apricot blossoms on each of these pages. So here is our section on structures. So we had just released a video featuring a pagoda. So that was a nice iconic structure. And now we have a section on different types of pavilions. Another name for these pavilions, they call them tings. So that's like basically like a pause or a stop, a place to stop. So they have these nice simple structures that are usually located on trails and paths where people can just stop and either take in a view or just rest. And then here is a little waterside pavilion there. And then here is a pavilion inside of mountains. And then now we're starting to see this other structure element, which is like the water bridge. So you can see a couple bridges here and then one here featured quite prominently. Other structures that are common, little houses and huts. So we can see here, we have this little village of houses and huts here, both this mountain village here depicted with a water bridge, and then this more of like a village that's in a valley here. And so we get a close-up of these different structures here, so we can see a little bit more detail in the roofs. So here's this idea of these brick houses along the river, and then another idea of some water village structures viewable from the river. Section on boats, also a very common structure element, or a very common idea to show human activity in a landscape painting. So we have these different styles of boats here. So we have these sailboat ideas, and then we have these more simple fishing boats. So here we start to see some finished paintings that are featuring some structures. Also, we see some figures here. So starting to see some paintings now featuring figures. And going back into sort of water depiction, so we have this like idea of showing waves here, or billows, where we're showing the waves breaking on the rocks. And then the idea of depicting water on lakes versus waters on the river, and the differing ways that differing levels of movement that are shown. Also, some boats depicted in these paintings. And then here, this idea of the ocean. And then this idea of water flowing into a lake over here. Now we get into this idea of clouds. So here we have a sea of clouds at Mount Huang. And over here is these cascading clouds. So this yellow mountain, or Wangshan, is one of the most beautiful places in China, and it is a really excellent place to go to see the interplay of mountains and mist. So again, some clouds rising from the valley here in this painting, and then painting clouds in more of like an outline kind of style here. So now we're seeing this idea of more subtle like mist. So here we have this idea of like the morning mist as it sort of goes across a scene. And then here is mist and its interplay with the mountains. Now we're getting some harsher weather here. We're showing like wind for the autumn, and then showing a boat here depicted in the rain or a storm. So you can see here these vertical sweeping strokes that are used to show the rain, this sort of shading or wash that suggests the rain. We have this idea of moon and pines here. That's very common, iconic pairing. And then our first appearance of snow. So here's a snowscape here on the right hand side. So here is a 3 stage workup for painting this autumn landscape. So they're showing like the outlining of the mountains here. And then we're adding more detail as far as having the trees on the mountaintops. And then we fill in with some color on the final stage. Actually, there's one more stage after that where they're adding the base color here in this stage, and then they're adding the accent color here. So we got this really stark red shown here. So here is another step-by-step guide of how to paint this landscape with a waterfall. So here you can see the major structures put into place. We have the tree and the 2 cliffs. And then they add these accent trees and the structure here. And then they do the initial color fill here where we get some appearances of this stone blue. And then the final painting here where we can see the rest of the accent colors, the layers of happy dots and accents that are put in, the coloration that's used for the tree trunks. So here now is an example of just some finished compositions. So we have this woodside cabin here. We have a sunset here at Wong Mountain. And then this, which is a view from Yuping Tower in Wong Mountain. And then here is a clear day in autumn. And then this painting, which they call a peaceful morning in autumn. This very nice sailboat composition where we have this pavilion on the top of a cliff overlooking the river, where they're seeing these sailboats. And then here's some cloud depictions over Wong Mountain. And then this is a painting called Pine Whispering to the Mountain Path. And this is sunset on Wong Mountain. And here is a painting called The Clear Day in Autumn. And we got now more seasonal types of renderings. And here is, so this is a clear day in autumn. This is a lively spring in a quiet valley. And then here is blossoming peaches and plums, this other idea of spring. And then here we have clouds over the clear mountains. This one is called The Evening Dusk, and then stalagmite cistern over here. And then this painting, which crosses over 2 panels here, is the bluish green rising cliffs. Continuing on here, we have early morning and watching the waterfall. We have these 3 figures here, and then the waterfall depicted over here. And then this is forest symphony. And then over these 2 panels, this is light wind, drizzling rain. And then this 2-panel painting is pine trees in the cliffs. And then over here we have a waterfall. So over here on the left-hand side is another painting that's called Waterfall, and then on the right-hand side, this more dramatically colored piece is called Sailboats at Wu Gorge. So we can see here now the appearance of this very strong vermilion accents with also the stone blue and the stone green. And this very beautiful sweeping composition that's called Clouds Over the Wong Mountain. And then over here we have Traveling Clouds. This is called Incessant Winds and Rains. And then this painting over here is called Steep Cliffs. And that will do it. So this is Chinese landscape painting manual by Wei Tzu-hsi. You can find this, if you're interested in this book, you can purchase it by going to our website at orientalartsupply.com. And make sure you like and subscribe for more content like this. And as always, we wish you happy painting.